Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer. That's right. It's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, it's my own little war litter. He's carrying me around. He's my own little rat hulk. It's Tom. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, boss. No, hey, friends. How's it going?
Look, I could have called you like a giant rat or something like that, but I didn't. I gave you. You're a big rat ogre. That's
You could
pretty
have
good.
said I was a storm fiend.
You're not that good. Don't oversell yourself. Look, if anybody on this cast is a Thunder Hulk, if anybody is just a host of weapon teams ready to deal death to anybody who dares oppose him, it is the one and only SkavenInAZ. His name has got Skaven in it. How you
It's
doing,
true.
buddy?
What's going on, guys? Glad to be here. Always fun to talk about my favorite army in the game. So thanks for having me, guys.
Yes, Skaven and I have been talking about the rats for years now, going back to many a different show and venue, and our shared love of this little weedy, cowardly, destructive, fantastic, most wonderful of all races. And Skaven knows that my love for them started with the monkey rats, and if you loved the monkey rats, then you're really in to this race. So there you go. That's what I'll say.
A face only a mother could love.
That is right. That is exactly right. Or a brood mother in this case. All right, Tommy, let's start off with some news, buddy. What do we got?
Absolutely. So we have just a couple elements on AOS news this week. The new White Dwarf, like real White Dwarf, is returning this week. As many of you know, the magazine, not the miniature. We'll get to that. The magazine is going back to a monthly issue. It's a big book. This week they've included for the inaugural issue. They've included this badass like Khorne slaughter priest with hackblade and I don't know the best Khorne model they've released. They're adding character model. They're adding for free in this magazine. It's just it's bonkers. So it's going to fly off the shelf. Supposedly there's tons of content. Just as a correction to last week, as I kind of anticipated, the rumor that we had reported that it was like the rules for each of their games. That's not what's in the magazine. There are new rules for each of the games. So stuff for Warhammer Request, there's stuff for Age of Sigmar, there's stuff for Overkill and all of the whatever the 40K games are. There's like 10 different rule supplements. There's a great battle report, stuff like that. So it is dropping this week. If you want an issue, you need to be at your GW store or local hobby store right away, or reserve it because, again, there's like a $30 miniature that's being included for free with every issue. If that Liberator moved magazines, the Slaughter Priest, yes, it's going to move magazines. Yep. And supposedly, a lot of people in my feed have reported that they've already gotten their White Dwarves.
Yeah, there's a lot of people people who subscribed already have them.
Yep, they're getting their stuff early rather than late this time. So kudos to GW for actually rewarding those subscribers. So it's arriving early. That's kind of the news. The White Dwarf miniature was announced, which is kind of a White Dwarf. He's painted like whatever. It's the old like Dragon Slayer Berserker that's been repainted and repackaged. Kind of disappointing. Vince, what are your thoughts on this?
It's dumb. It's the dumbest thing. Like, it's just so stupid. Like, I get it. They weren't going to do anything really that special for the relaunch of the magazine, and this was the easiest, cheapest way to get it out there. Throw one of those. I just picture them opening the door to the painting room, and there's just like a guy sitting there working on something or some gal, and they're just like, here, paint this and make it look like a White Dwarf. Go. I'll be here tomorrow. It better be done.
But it's a Slayer. It's not a warrior. And they're like, doesn't matter.
Shut up.
Oh, that's fantastic. So anyways, White Dwarf, the miniature is a miniature in the vein of the old White Dwarf has been released in a repackage.
I would call it underwhelming, to be extremely generous.
Yes. So that's dropping this week. The Forge World has announced that they're extending their free shipping for 2 more weeks on purchases of like 125 pounds or something like that. I don't know. It's a discount from what their normal free shipping is. but you're still going to drop $200 for free shipping.
If you were really in the market for very large, overpriced monsters, you could probably duplicate in Bones or other lines for much cheaper.
I'm just gonna say that by the end of this show, you may have a reason to take advantage of that. That's all I'm gonna say.
Previews, yeah, I know where you're going too, and it's so funny because I had a similar thought when I was reading over your stuff there, and I was like, somebody's trying to sell some Forge World miniatures. Chris is on the line here. Should have a co-marketing deal.
So we'll get to that later. Now transitioning into Ninth Age news, but this also applies to AOS. Vince this week announced the new community project, the Budget of Sigmar, Budget of Sigmar 2 Electric Boogaloo. But it's not necessarily restricted to Age of Sigmar. It's just about painting units. So a number of certain units of infantry and heroes and monsters. So if that's something that you're interested in painting units and being motivated, check out our Painters Motivating Painters community, and that's kind of where this is centered. And I'm sure that Vince can link his video below if you guys are interested for the rules and kind of what this is going to look like. So
yeah, I can do that, absolutely. It's certainly, I'm not going to lie, it's I don't care what game system you're playing, King's War, 9th AOS, doesn't matter. It's up for all that. If you want to get an army painted and have a very personalized army based on conversions, it might be a challenge you want to look into. I'll link to the video that explains what it is and how we're going to run it, and then from there that has the links out to the PMP and everything like that.
Absolutely. So moving on to Ninth Age news, TMS, Tabletop Miniature Solutions, successfully funded their campaign. They were above their last stretch goal by a considerable margin, and we'll have the links below for those that are interested. They've also posted some work-in-progress pics on their Facebook page, and those are worth checking out as well. Lost Kingdom Miniatures. So what was that, Vince?
I said they unlocked everything on that, didn't they?
Yep. They did, yeah, every single thing, yes. So it's the whole shooting match. And I'll tell you right now, I'm very interested to see where and I mentioned this before, I'll mention it again and probably talk about it 3 or 4 more times. I can't wait to see where the Dread Sphinx comes out because I loved the concept art for that. So that'll be where I'm certainly sending some money their way.
Yeah, it looks great. The Lost Kingdom miniatures also dropped. They went way over their stretch goal. There are still 2 days left for those that are interested, so check it out. It's on Indiegogo. We'll have the link.
Yeah, and I'll hold on a second on that one before we move on because I have art.
Ooh.
Ooh. So this is Lost Kingdom miniatures. It's not just art. This is their first actual cast. So this is the guy here.
Yeah. Man, I need to not spend more money. This is not helping me.
Pretty great stuff there. Yeah.
I was tempted to pick up either this one or the Tabletop Minis armies just because of how sick these models look, and then I realized that I need to find a painter to paint what I've already got, so I held off successfully for now.
Yeah, these are pretty great. Like the detail here on this is really nice. Good posing. It's good.
Mm-hmm. I actually like the scale better on those than on the Bull Centaurs. The Bull Centaurs always seemed a little bit oversized to me.
Sure.
And so I really like what they've done here.
There you go. I wanted to make sure we shared that up because I thought that was pretty awesome, and they shared that out. So like you said, there is still now there's about a day and a half, depending on if you're watching this live or as of our recording this, there's about a day and a half left. So the link will be down below. If you're interested in getting in on it, you can see all the other stuff in the updates.
And then finally, with regard to crowdfunding, Hidden Dreams have updated their crowdfunding campaign also on Indiegogo, which are the Sylvan Elves. Their first Blade Dancer concept was finalized. You can check it out on the site. And they've provided a rough concept for their second one. So both look pretty nice. And I think if you're interested in Wood Elves and Sylvan Elves, they are worth checking out. So, did you have that art, Vince, or we just going to?
No, I don't have the art for that one. But yeah, I'll throw the link down there.
And then for those that are kind of related to Ninth Age news, a member of the Ninth Age community, Captain Clunes, has started a nice blog about sculpting and modeling. It's basically it's kind of teaching a lot of the basics and the beginner stuff, kind of the tools that the beginner needs and stuff like that. And for those that are just new to the hobby, it is definitely worth checking out. So
Chris, this is like 2 levels away from what you will ever do in this hobby.
Wow, I feel so loved here. A cheap shot at my paint skills only, what, 8 minutes in, Vince? Thank you.
No, I'm just saying sculpting your own miniature from scratch. Look, here's what I'll say. When I was at Gen Con, they had a class on sculpting your own miniature, okay? So, like, you start from scratch. In fact, I'll even show you what you use to start making your own miniature. You're not going to be able to really see it. Can you see what that is? It's a little piece
paper
of
clips.
wire. No, it's wire. It's not. It looks like paper clips, but it's not. It's just very thin gauge wire that you wrap into this little human form. And from this, you start making green stuff, and you start shaping a little body in tiny little pieces, like tiny little pieces that you wrap and wrap and wrap, and then wrap and wrap and wrap, and then wrap and wrap and wrap. So this class was about 2 hours, and I did a fig, like part of a fig. Like I got the basic fig muscle structure down. And at the end of it, I was like, that was neat that I learned that. I am never going to do this again. This was a nightmare. Who does this? So I get where you're coming from. That wasn't a shot at you at all, man. I get it, because I'm sure you look at a lot of people like sitting. You look at me sitting there doing 40 or 50 hours on a figure, and you're like, what the hell's the matter with you? What brain injury did you suffer that made you think that was a good idea? And I get it. So
the only thing I've ever had sculpted is a lefty. And this was by my normal painter, Matt Sturbins, and he took it on as there isn't one. You have a really easy concept of an Empire steam tank with something on the front that I can make work. Cool. And he pulls out lefty, and I love him to death. And at that point, he's like, I'm never sculpting anything for you again at that price, because I've now found out that while his paint prices are ridiculous, the only thing more ridiculous than that is sculpting prices, because it's just not worth it. And hats off to all those people that actually do this stuff for a living, because I know I sure as hell don't have the patience to do it.
Yeah, it took me 2 hours to realize I am not built of stern enough stuff to be able to do it. I was like, this is great, not for me. Thumbs up to everybody who does. Yeah, if you're one of those people, good for you. No, thank you. All right.
Okay, and then just briefly, the number of individuals within the 9th Age community, Blondebeer, Callum, and our own SkavenInAZ, who's here with us, have begun releasing beginner videos for just regarding tactics for the various forces. As I kind of promoted on our show with regarding Skaven a couple weeks ago. There are other videos for some of the other forces, so I would encourage you guys to check them out.
There you go. Yeah, you're what, 4 videos into the series pretty quick. You had a bunch of them all queued up, right?
I had 3 of them that I knew that I wanted to do real fast. That was the unit building one, slaves, and I forget what number 3 was. Number 4 came about because somebody else kind of pushed that way, and then number 5, well, is all the credit in the world for that one.
Oh, there we go. Okay, that's right. And of course, we're going to talk a lot about. We're going to do some winner and losers, some comparisons in the Vermin Swarm and T9A tonight. But what I would highly encourage everyone to do is, if you want to go deeper in the conversation beyond what we're going to talk about, because Tom and I. Let me separate this. Tom and I are idiots. Yep. But if you want to go listen to the actual subject matter expert talk intelligently and more deeply on individual subjects, go check out Skaven's video series. I'll link to the first one in the series, so you can then just follow it straight through from there.
That's accurate.
All right, there you go. We're always morons who barely know what we're talking about. Yes, correct. All right. Any other news we got there, Tom?
No, I think that's it.
All right. That means it's time for some pick of the week. So this is where we share our video or blog or something that we read or watched or whatever that we like and want to share with you. And the links for all this will be down below. So, Skaven, you're the guest. You get the blessing and the curse of starting first. What do you got?
Easy. I found, just doing some digging when I was kind of starting my journey into T9A, and I found a guy named Hoyle-is-Mad, and I've talked about him on the Warhammer YouTubers community page before, but I want to highlight him again because I found him right before he kind of went to his big tournament, Buckeye Battles, and watched all of his Saurian Ancient stuff, and he's got some really good stuff. He plays the army a different way. He's got a good follow-through in what he does. He was fairly successful at Buckeye. Really good channel just to pick up and watch, even if you're not a Saurian Ancients guy, just as a guy to see the way that somebody else plays the game, which is why I subscribe to him. I think his videos are pretty well done. I think you can learn a lot from him. Go check him out.
Vince, is that one of the people that stomped you at Buckeye?
No, I didn't play any Lizardmen, thank you very much. And it's not like my record was that terrible, thank you very much. No, I faced 3 Sylvan Elves opponents out of 5 players. 3 Sylvan Elves opponents.
Tom, have you ever gone to a GT?
No. Shut up. Hey,
that was a shot in the dark, and I just want to make sure of that.
Hey, I have one coming up. Just saying.
Congratulations. No, it was yeah, a lot of trees. That's what I saw. A lot of trees. I couldn't see the forest for all the trees. They were trying to stomp my poor Undying Legion's face down their dead throats. All right. So the classic matchup of Sylvan Elves versus the Doom or the Undying Dynasties, like Legions, the dead people. Anyways. The point is that good stuff. I'll link out to Skaven's channel there, to what he mentioned. Tommy, what do you got?
So it's kind of self-promotion, but it's more promotion for another channel. I was a guest on Mitch's channel this last week for unlocking, kind of going through the Nurgle, Chaos Nurgle forces in Age of Sigmar. And talking about using the General's Handbook, talking about 1,000 point, 50 or 2,000 point, 2,500 point lists. So yeah, it was fun. I'd encourage you to check it out. I mean, more importantly than the Nurgle unlocking, Mitch has been doing a series of these. Vince did a Tomb Kings with him, and there's been a number of these, and they're doing a really good job on them. So I'd really encourage you guys to check them out if you're interested. Maybe your armory is on there.
There you go. I like how you shoved Glocken into your 2K list.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome.
Never a bad time to bring him out. So my pick is, since I'm going to direct you to Skaven's Tactica series, and since his number 5 video was specifically addressing the Naphtha thrower, which I'm sure we'll get some discussion later tonight, you have to, of course, I have to point you back to a critical video that I feel is really leading the way on the discussion of Vermin Swarm and T9A, and may have a few things to say about the Naphtha thrower. Our old friend Lord Tremendous released a new rant, and in seeking to update Ant's Christmas classic, the top 10 things he hated about the Skaven, Lord T has released the top 10 things he hates about the Vermin Swarm, and it's all in good fun. He had a little bet going with one of his opponents about whether he won or lost, and whether he would make a video praising the Vermin Swarm or hating them, and I won't spoil any of his battle reports because that's not my job, but I will say that Gnome Runner had a little assistance from our guest, and our guest is a really good player of Skaven, and his opponent took that good advice to heart. So you can infer from that what you will. There we go.
One small correction. The bet was actually with me, not with his opponent.
Ah, yes, sorry.
Lord Tremendous popped on my second Ramblings video, and me and Andrew Gale and us went for like 4 hours, and that kind of wound up somewhere in there, and he finally played him, and, well, yeah, you do the math.
Very nice. All right. Awesome. So I'm going to link out to that because I think it was pretty darn fun. For those of you who remember the top 10 things you hate about that Ant did that he hated about Skaven, it's always great to see people get very upset at the rule-breaking rats. It's truly, as a longtime player of the rat folk, it's really not that much different than most opponents after a good game. So it's pretty much the same experience that they all have. It's universal. All right, so let's get into some hobby time. So, Chris, what do you got? You've been making a move to a new force, right?
I've not been making a move to a new force. I'm simply fleshing out what I've got. But most of my hobbying has been Not of the painting type, as I'm sure most people who've watched me in the past know, although, as I'm sure will come out somehow if I don't bring it out myself, I did successfully pin a model with direction from our good friend Vince here, giving me some help on that. Now I just have to master glue. Um,
One step
what
at a
I've been
time,
working
brother. One step at a time.
What I've been working on is honestly just community stuff, and I've talked
Mm.
about this a bit in the past, but it's about just building the T9A community up here in Arizona. I'm somehow the ringleader of all this. I don't understand why. If you joined or looked at the Arizona T9A forum, you will see myself and several other people just talking mad trash all across it and just encouraging people to come play. We've got a tournament set up in Scottsdale here on October 1st for our first one, and within an hour of me posting it, I had like 14 people saying we're going to come. So
Nice.
really excited for that. Looking forward just to see the community continue to grow, and just trying to get more people out there. Because honestly, you know, and this is something you guys have said in the past, if you're playing games, it doesn't matter what game you're playing, it's good.
Yep.
Plain and simple. And if I get out there and have some AOS people watch me play and want to come over and join us, awesome. If I go out there and see AOS play and I want to go join them, awesome. It's all about the hobby, playing games, and having fun and building community, and that's what I've been working on.
Exactly. That's 100% true. And look, that's some great hobby time, and it's something we don't talk about very often. But I've got to give you kudos. And I did watch part of that discussion with you and Andrew, and there was a lot of great talk about building up that community and just little things like all of you rolling down there to see them, right? Of the Phoenix Tucson clash. And it was awesome because it produced great battle reports out of both sides. I think it really juiced a lot of people up for the hobby. And it's just broadcasting that positivity, because the reality is the best thing you can ever do to if you want your game to grow, be positive about it and share that positivity with other people. That's what's going to grow your community right there.
And I talked about it on a video that I did a while back. I don't remember what it was called, but it was just about building your community. It was actually one of the responses to the topic of the week, now that I think about it. And just talking about just do stuff. Whatever it is that you're going to do, do it and make it public and be positive about it. But it doesn't matter what that stuff is. I mean, if you sell stuff that you don't want anymore, put on there that it's T9A or AOS compatible. That gets people to go, oh yeah, what's T9A? Maybe I'll look it up and maybe I can play. Go encourage somebody who hasn't played in a while to come play a game. Go talk to that guy who dropped out 2 editions ago who still has his stuff under his bed. Hey, come check it out, see if you like it. Just talk to people. The thing that we get in the mindset of gamers, and especially out here in Arizona, the problems we had is that everybody's very in-focused. Everybody just watched themselves and looked at their own group and never reached out and did anything because we were waiting on other people to do it for us, and that never happened and it never will happen. We have to do that, and so everything you can do to just advertise and talk about what you're doing, from interacting here on YouTube to talking about wherever it is that you go, to just going to the game store and going, hi, my name's Chris, how are you, to people. Whatever you can do is far better than what you don't do. Plain and simple.
There you go. Tommy, what about you, buddy? What's your hobby time with right now?
I am working on one of the staples to any good Chaos Force, Chaos Warriors.
The old stock standard, sure.
Yep.
Got your Chaos Warriors going. How close are you to this? Yeah, what, you're doing 30, right?
Something like that. I'm doing a lot of highlighting is the answer.
Gotcha. So you're rounding toward home.
Yeah, I'm rounding towards home. So and then I'm kind of dinking around right now on cleaning some mold lines for my Budget of Sigmar project. Just trying to see if some of my concept stuff is going to be viable.
Gotcha. Very nice. For myself, it's still Sylvaneth City. I'm heading to Nova this weekend for the painting competition and for a bunch of painting classes and all sorts of things like that. Like, I'm literally just going to be, I just like booked my whole weekend with painting classes with all of my hobby heroes, so it's going to be awesome to sit there for hours with them. But everything I need for the competition's ready, so I've returned back to my tree people. So I posted up that unit earlier today, and now this is the next person I'm working on. I got to have a little caster. So we've modded him up here to have not a little wussy staff, but actually be casting something out of the end of that staff. The normal one has such a weedy little vine coming out of the end. We had to take that up a notch. So yeah, there we go. He's coming along nicely, I think.
Good.
Very excited about him. And that'll be the 3rd tree man. We got to do one more after that bare mins, because you can never have enough big tree men, I think.
Yeah,
Or
you got to get it ready
ladies.
for Holy Havoc.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, like we're gonna bring Sylvaneth, Tom. That's a nice attempt at a misdirect. We're bringing chaos, folks. You can know right now. You can know. I don't care. Hold on, let me turn my chair. See how that? Hold on, lean the wrong way. It's this stuff back there. It's all that Zinch stuff. I don't know how I'm pointing. This camera's very confusing. It's back over my shoulder. It's all chaos. Get ready.
All
The
chaos.
end times are upon ye, those who would oppose us. All right? The doom of man, the hour is told. So there you go. All right. Now, I'm going to laugh when we just get our teeth kicked down our throat constantly. But I'm going to talk big. As we get closer, I'll just start talking more and more hype. I'm just going to run the hype train straight up to 11.
We are completely going to get trashed. It's going to be fantastic.
All right, so speaking of the hype train, let's move to our feature segment this week. Let's talk about the Vermin Swarm in T9A and the winners and the losers of therein. Now, Chris, would you agree that, as with most any edition since Skaven became a thing, they have been somewhat controversial in discussion in the various locations where they are discussed?
I would say that would be a fairly accurate statement.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start here. Your overall impressions, your feelings. You know, we've got a series of sort of categories we're going to move through and pick winners and losers, but let's start at the top. What's your overall impressions? What's your feelings on it? How happy are you with it and the way it's come out in the 1.0 version?
I like it a lot. It holds a lot of the balance of maybe not 8th edition Skaven, but harkens back to some of the 6th ed lists that were out there. And it gives just a good flavor of what the army has always been and always should be. Lots of cheap things running around with big guns that will kill things. And just for boot, there's some stuff in there that'll kill you in hand-to-hand as well. The flavor is there. It's not quite as much as it was in 8th edition, but then again, GW had 8 editions to build that up, and that's something that the T9A crew will work on as they're continuing to build the project. It's going to come. It's not quite there yet, but the overall theme and what the army does, I'm very happy with it. I've got a little things I could nitpick, but there's plenty of other things that counterbalance and make that well, so I think they did a great job.
All right, fair enough. You know, it's funny because I think I don't know what the situation is with the meta, but I think that, like, I know certainly it was my original intention was to bring it to Buckeye, but what I will say about it is that and 1.0, you know, released not that far before Buckeye to where everybody really had a chance to really get in and break everything open and so on and so forth, right? There's a lot of exploration still going on. And my original intention was to bring Vermin Swarm, but I think that the lists that are competitive in the current version are very different than their 8th ed counterparts, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's why I ended up bringing Undying instead, because when I looked at it and sort of like thought, well, this would be my list, and then I looked, I was like, I don't like that list, and I didn't have time to like cast around and find the list I really loved, because it is a little deeper. It relies so much on having synergy and things working together properly. I can't just say, like, let me plop this stuff out there. I know it's going to work on its own and be good, right? In sort of a vacuum. Right. It has to. You've pointed it out on your video many times that, like, the vermin, the Skaven, the rats, they've always won, whatever version they're in. They've always won by trying to eke little advantages in synergistic ways in every phase. We do a little work in magic, we do a little work in movement, like, you know, chaffing, we do a little work in shooting, we do a little work in combat when we have to, right? You've got to, like, eke these minor victories. You don't flat out win in one phase, unlike many armies.
Right. And all that synergy will build into that massive win. But if you don't do the steps, it's kind of like you're trying to climb a flight of stairs. And with Vermin Swarm, you're taking the stairs one step at a time until you finally reach the summit, which is a crushing victory. You can't do, like, for instance, Chaos can, which is I'm going to roll up, punch you in the mouth, and take the flight of stairs in one step. It doesn't work that way, plain and simple. You have to be able to build your little advantages, peel a couple wounds here, block somebody off from getting a favorable charge so that you get the favorable charge. Little victories all across the way. And to your point, if you don't have a list that can do that, you're not going to win very many games.
And I think that kind of a challenge, so there was more than more than 100 players at Buckeye, or roundish 100. There was one Vermin Swarm player. Yep. Exactly.
Yep. And you just don't. That's low for rats in any edition. It's not always a popular army. It's not the biggest army out there. But I think that kind of speaks to what you were talking about, is not everybody had figured out the book yet, and everybody had some other toys they wanted to play with, which is perfectly fine. I think they'll be more popular going forward.
Yeah, I agree. So let's get into some of why we think they'll be more popular going forward, because I tend to agree with you, though I also, as always, I wouldn't say I'm worried about what's going to change, but I think there are things that are going to change, and we'll end this on some predictions for the future. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. So we're going to do some winners and losers. We're going to go around through, we're going to make our way through some categories. And I thought we'd start off with infantry. Our old, basic, run-of-the-mill rats. The horde that the horde army is famous for. So for this, I've kind of restricted the discussion to, like, I know there's a lot of things that are technically infantry in the army, but I mean, like, the things that we generally go make blocks of and either hide or wait, or you know what I'm saying. In other words, not a weapons team or something silly like that. All right. So, Chris, as usual, you're the guest. You go first. What do you got for your winner and loser in the infantry category?
This is a little bit of backstory, but as some of you may know, I'm also a mod on the underempire.net forums, and for years and years, especially at the end of 7th, beginning of 8th, one of the huge debates between all of the members on there was what was better, plague monks, Stormvermin, and each camp had arduous love for which everybody thought was better. And throughout 8th, as it progressed through that, Stormvermin ended up winning out because of the strength 4, because of the buffs you could give them, and because they were core, not special. Well, T9A has entirely reversed that. Plague Brotherhood is by far and away the winner in the infantry battle for this edition, because they removed a core. And with the buffs they got from the paired weapon rule, from the fact that they now have hatred, the fact that they can have plague ridden, and all the other wins they've gotten buffed with, they are monsters when it comes to close combat, and you engage that unit at your peril.
Yeah, I want to really take a minute and hone in on this, because I think it could be easy for someone reading this. If someone just cracked open the book and read over all of them, I'm not sure that it'd be immediately obvious why they're so good. But they really are. And I want to take a dive for a moment into, like, so what's your thought process? I mean, you've seen them in action. I've seen them in action. I know what they're capable of. But in your mind, what are the things that define them as being so good?
Well, let's break this down a couple different ways and just go into one of the problems with the Vermin Swarm book is the fact that the only place you can get banners for scoring secondary objectives is from core. You've got 3 options: Rat at Arms, Vermin Guard, Plague Brotherhood. And so the fact that they are one of the units can take the banner and they're so superior in combat makes them amazing. But if you're not very familiar with the list, you have to kind of apply the rules from the core 9th Age book to know why that is. Paired weapons gives you a boost to initiative. The champion rule, giving the guy up front with the champion weapon skill 4 and the ability to never fail a charge less than 4 inches. So as a Vermin Swarm player with a 5-inch move on everything, you know that if you're 9 inches away, you're going to make that charge whatever. No more of this multiples with your big plague pendulum, which is going to fail and they get flanked, you frenzy baited or whatever out of the way. The fact that it can take the plague pendulum, which is probably the single most destructive force inside the 9th Age, bar none at this point. The fact that you have the ability to buff it with the new magic lore that's come out, with Shadow being able to be taken by Vermin Swarm, which is never available in 8th, which gives, I don't know, here's my horde of Plague Brotherhood with a Plague Furnace in it, and I've got Mind Razor now. Die. And all these little pieces, things that you can build into this, and I'm not even talking yet about the fact that I can put an assassin in the unit. I can put a Doomblade Alert in the unit. I can put a BSB in the unit. I can put anything I want in the unit and bury a Magister so far in the back you'll never get to him, and have all my points sucked into that in a Doomstar if I really want to. There's so many things you can build into this unit that it just it overpowers everything else in the game at this point, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's funny because I agree. There's so many little things that came together here, right? Like it's sort of the no one straw that broke the camel's back. It's the paired weapons being as good as they are to push them back up to that initiative 4. Obviously, Hatred and Frenzy still pretty decent as always. The champion rule, the plague-ridden rule, it's everything you said. The fact that I think you're absolutely right about the pendulum. Like that thing, it's pretty gross, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it in some detail as well.
We will get into the pendulum, but I'm saying the rest of my list. I'm gonna say I'm not choosing anything else that goes with the Peg Brotherhood for the simple fact that this list could entirely be that unit because it is that good.
Right. And you know, you watch it. I'm sure it'll come up in our future predictions. But so I agree. It's my pick for outright winner too. Like I don't know how you could in good conscience pick anything else. I will say I'll give an honorable mention, if we can, agreeing that the Brotherhood is just so good. Okay, we know that. Let's move on. I'll give an honorable mention to the Rat-at-Arms.
Yes.
Okay. Because, I mean, they're more or less the same unit they've always been, frankly, which is fine. They're still a decent deal at 4 points a model, 5 points with the spear that makes them somewhat dangerous, I guess, to cavalry, but who cares? The real reason you're taking them is because, one, as you said, they're one of the 3 units that can have a standard, and 2, they can have that meat grinder, right? And that thing ain't no joke.
No, sir.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a beat stick. It's not as much of a beat stick as the pendulum, but when you can take a 65-point unit, drop it in the middle of a Rat-at-Arm unit, which nobody ever thought about before, and give it a 2+ armor save, 2d6 strength 4 -2 armor save, impact, and grinding attacks every round of combat. And that combined again with another little rule that just kind of comes from the core thing. I don't take spears. I take shields. You're hitting me on 4+ now. And before, humble little Rat-at-Arms at 4 or 5 points a model, you're always depending on hitting them on 3s, whether you're Chaos, whether you're whatever. You just come in to kill those guys. And all of a sudden, you're hitting them on 4s, and you've got this just raw chainsaw thing that's just speed bumping 2 to 12 guys a turn. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. You know, I featured a couple of those units in my battle reports, and you just run a couple into something, and they just die. It doesn't matter if they're orcs, if they're lizardmen, whatever. 2d6 strength 4 -2 armor save it's bad. It's tough. You got to kill that thing.
Yeah, I mean, to put it in old terms of 8th edition, it's a free breath weapon every turn, right? I mean, that's what's happening. It's dumping an extra breath weapon into the unit every turn. I mean, but with a better AP, right? So yeah. Okay, so let's talk losers. Who are the losers in the infantry world?
The big losers has to be Vermin Guard because they simply don't have a role anymore. You know, in 8th edition, Vermin Guard were there to help with the infantry. You'd put a Fellblade Lord in with them. You take the Rending Banner, and you've got a bunch of guys there's lots of them. They've got the Death Blade holding Tyrant in there to kill anything big, and they would do a reasonable job of cracking open armor. But in this edition, armor is not as prevalent, number 1, at least in my meta. Number 2, 3 attacks is better than 1 attack at -2 or -1. Plus, with the benefit of Shadow for the lore, the more attacks you take, the more auto wounding you're taking from Mind Razor or from hitting into Toughness 1 or whatever. It's just that much better. So they don't have a real role of needing to do anything, with the fact that everybody can take a magical standard now. 1, that doesn't give them any special thing that they do better than Rat-at-Arms do. And 3, they can't have the meat grinder in the middle of them, so they can't even operate the Chainsaw of Doom. What are they there for? The only thing you might take a unit for them is you take a minimum unit and give them the Lightning Rod. But your BSP can have that. So Vermin Guard just simply don't have anything that makes them stand out and gives them a role to fulfill. And in the synergy part of what we've been talking about so far, if you don't have something that you can do and do better than anybody else, you're not on the list. And that's not just Vermin Swarm, that's anybody. So, out.
Yeah, it's interesting because on paper, they look more or less the same as they did in the last edition, right? You look at stats, I think they actually, I'm trying to remember points-wise if they're actually even a little bit cheaper than they were last time, but it's you know, it might be right on. I can't remember exactly. Old 8th edition points have fled from my mind.
4 to 40 is 20 points cheaper, and they come with shields, which you had to pay a point for an 8th.
There you go. But nonetheless, it's so funny. It's a case of the world shifting around them, right? Where they didn't change, but the rest of everything around them did, and it made them worse by comparison. Because I think you're exactly right. And this was the trick. This right here is actually the thing that tripped me up going to Buckeye, because I have my big Vermin Guard Horde, and I've got my War Litter in there or whatever, but that standard kit out, and I was looking at it and I was trying to figure out what do I do with it, and I was like, I don't like how this fits into this army at all. I don't know what it's going to do. What's its purpose here? I couldn't find a way to play it. I was happy with it. All right, I want to ask you a question. Is there a world where you take foot pads?
Yes.
All right. Explain to me your use for foot pads and what army they fit into.
It fits into any army that's not facing a shooting army. Because what it does is it allows you to have a mobile skirmishing bunker for your mage, much like the skirmishing archers of Empire or Bretonnia in days old, where you put your mages in there and they distributed leadership and they can run away from anything they need to run from. They're there. The problem is if you shoot them and make them panic, you run your general off the board, and that doesn't work. So I don't find them applicable for every game. But unlike editions past, at least I can conceive of a possibility of a way to use them. Whereas before it was just, I don't even buy the models. They're that bad, and I own almost everything.
Sure. All right. I will accept that you have given me some possible use for those. As thin and tenuous as it may be, I accept your explanation. Because those are, to me, I look at those guys and I was like, you're useless before, and I still can't figure out a good use for you. Like,
it's slim, but it's there. I've given you at least a little bit of hope to those people that own those models, because otherwise, no thanks.
Fair enough. Now, we didn't talk about slaves at all, and what I want to say is, instead of talking about slaves, you did a whole video about this, right? And you really got into the nitty-gritty and the upsides, downsides, because I think slaves and their place in the world has changed. But rather than try to recreate your discussion, go watch the Tactica series that Skaven did. He's got a lot of talk about slaves, because if you're like me, or a lot of people who had 8th Ed armies, you probably got massive bricks of them, some of which may be suddenly repurposed to be Ratted Arms units. Yeah. So, but that doesn't mean that you still don't have a use for your wonderful 2-point slaves, who are still 2 points, which is a great world to live in.
I still field 100 of them. That's all I'm going to say.
There you go. All right, so let's move on to our winners and losers in the characters department. And classic. There's a lot of characters. Skaven have always had a decent number to choose from here. So let's go to it. Who's your winner? Who's your loser?
Well, the winner for now, at least, is by far and away, I believe, is the Scar Assassin. Unlike in past, where they didn't necessarily have enough to give them a viable option for fulfilling a role in the army. They were expensive, they didn't have enough attacks, they didn't have the ability to really pump out enough damage to be good at what they were trying to do, unless you fielded several of them alongside other character support. And for an assassin, you should be able to work by yourself. You shouldn't have to have other people sitting there trying to help you out. The Scar Assassin inside the 9th Age Vermin Swarm book is a rather amazing model because of all the things that it can do that nothing else necessarily can. And the fact that this model can come to be a 190-point whirling dervish of death based off of what it's able to do, because of the fact that it can take something like Mithril Mail and have a 2+ armor save and a 4+ ward save, which, if you run into that unexpectedly and you think you're just going to speed bump this guy, that's like trying to speed bump a Chaos Lord. You're not going to do that very easily. And oh, by the way, he's also got up to 5 attacks with poison that does D3 multiple wounds and has lethal strike, that he's going to kill you at initiative 9 before you get to go. And that's somebody that has long-term staying power with its kit and lots of damage because, of course, you give him either the armlet of power or the potion of strength, and all of a sudden he's strength 6 or 8 trying to kill you with all those benefits. And whatever it is he's hitting is going to die quickly.
Yeah, it's a really good point that he benefits from those kind of what do I want to call it, like sort of temporary enhancements very well, like the potion of strength, right? Because the multiple wounds D3 is obviously just, you know, super powerful, especially against certain armies, as a particular Lord Tremendous might have learned. You know, this guy, he's gonna cut up some ogre meat. That's all I'm saying when he has those multi wounds. And not that he's not going to be great in general, again, assassinating a lot of things that have more than one wound. But the trick is, obviously, it can't combine with a magical weapon, but that doesn't mean it can't combine with the old potion of strength or something like that, right? Yeah, exactly. And you're right. The 5 attacks. I mean, this guy's just a host of options. Are you happy enough with the Magister and how he's come out, being that he's still more or less the same guy? Like, again, do you feel happy enough with your wizard?
He dropped a leadership, which for in 8th edition would have been the death blow because you couldn't afford to take a warlord and be competitive still. But in this edition, you don't need him to be a 7 necessarily because there are other ways that you can bunker him. I mean, if you looked at 7th or 8th edition, a lot of people, like, let's throw Naren Zaid out there, you put your guy in slaves. And so in slaves, he just distributes leadership 7, this gives everybody leadership 10, and the bubble and everything works great. You don't need that now because, number 1, every unit can take a magic banner, so you can give everybody the flag of discipline or whatever it's called, and he's leadership 7 again. Number 2, you can take a cheap tyrant, put him in the chair, and all of a sudden he's got 18-inch leadership 7, which is just amazing when it comes to leadership control and giving yourself a bubble. You have problems with bubble management, take a tyrant. Fixed, done. You know, so him not being leadership 7 isn't as crucial as it was before. And when I consider we dropped leadership 7 to 6 and we picked up the ability to have shadow, I'll take that trade every day and twice on Sundays. For the simple fact that it gives Vermin Swarm the ability to do things that they didn't have before. Because now with that horde of slaves that we're talking about, and I put into that big whatever it is that you've got, that big toughness 8 Sphinx that you brought to the table, and you've got slaves, and you know, used to be you just sit there and grind on him for the rest of the game. Now I pop Mind Razor on you, and I'm auto-wounding you. And go ahead and make those 5-up word save, or 5-up armor saves that you've got, and watch that thing die in 2 rounds of combat. It's just so powerful, the things that it lets you do, because now combat bricks that are not combat bricks can become combat bricks, and things that Vermin Swarm or Skaven had problems killing before are now something that we can just speed bump through, especially with some of the things we've got. Shadow is an awesome lore, if a little bit high costed, but well worth it because the amount of attacks that we can bring to the table and the amount of models we bring to the table. You can't kill a brick of slaves in 1 round of combat, and if you're minus D3 strength, you're going to sit there and be stuck on that tar pit even longer. Or if you're minus D3 toughness, then you're going to die faster. There's just so many things you can do with this lore to synergize perfectly with Vermin Swarm that's just amazing. And even if it's not Shadow, Lore of Ruin is perfectly viable as well. +1 to wound, giving yourself lethal strike, extra rank of attacks from the attribute, and an extra rank of combat bonus. There are so many things that you can do with these 2 lores that make the Magister more of a support caster instead of the all-focusing, I'm going to power scroll, you know, power strength or 25 dreaded 13th spell and kill your entire army. He doesn't have to do that anymore. I can simply have him in the back supporting more synergistic, and that works out well with the army.
Yeah, I think the Shadow really is a game changer, and you know, the other big thing obviously with the Shadow is your attribute, right? Like what you're getting off of successfully casting that spell is also incredibly beneficial, just for the need to have pieces where you need them. You know, we've talked about the synergy, and that ability to have that piece where you need it at the right time, I think, is incredibly beneficial, right?
I wish I had a 15-point engineer with Shadow, because that would just be awesome. Here's my 4 engineers I'm taking. I cast a spell. Bloop. There's your piece of chaff road blocking you. Oh, wait, here's another one just in case I need to, or I want to double flee. The fact that I don't have that anymore makes it a little less good, but there's still plenty of perfectly reasonable and well well used advantages that come with the attribute. So I like it, even if it's not my most favorite attribute out there.
All right. So is that our segue into your loser?
Yeah, that segues perfectly into my loser, because the engineer becoming a Ratchet machinist and receiving a 50 point bump. No, thank you.
This guy has to hold the record for largest percentage point change, right? I mean, it's got to be. Maybe not the biggest number of points, but percentage in the game. I mean, it's got to be the case, right? Nearly 500% increase in cost.
To be fair, he got a lot of cool stuff. I mean, he can channel. He's got 3 built-in spells that are good spells. He gets Black Lightning, Peat Fire, and Enchanted Blades. But one of the problems, if you call it a problem with the Vermin Swarm, is that you've got too many good things to cast. And this guy, combined with the bound spells dispelling rule, if they already get +1 to dispel it, you're having to pump so many dice through him that you can't cast the spells that are really game-changing, or you just don't use them. If you're not using him to cast, at 65 points, he's certainly not worth throwing out there as chaff, except in emergency situations. He hasn't found a way in my list. I think he might still be viable if you're taking him in a no magic list, because then you can take the crown for the Dispel Scroll for the no mage list. You can still get some spells off, but in your everyday competitive list, he doesn't fit.
You know, what's funny about him to me, by the way, I actually am going to I'm going to pick a bigger loser, but we'll get to that in a second. In my mind, a bigger loser, but maybe you'll disagree with me. I don't know. What's funny to me about this guy is that he hit the gym in between last edition and now, right? Because he was classically just a normal run-of-the-mill Skaven with 2 wounds, right? That was his thing. And now this dude's just rocking all the 4s, right? Like he worked out, he got on a good protein diet, just really he hit up GNC. And yeah, I showed up and he's just like, look at these guns over here. Like, I don't need him to have that good of stats. I'm like, maybe I could give those back. Let's go back to 3s. Can I don't understand, you're never gonna give me 15 points back. Can I get down to like 45? Like, what can I get out of these bonuses, out of these stats?
Well, that's and it's funny you mentioned guns, because that's what I see all the tournament lists doing. Is if they're gonna field one of these, they take a couple of them and each one of them gets a Jezzail. Which Jezzails are no slouch when it comes to shooting, and with their 4, a ballistic skill 4, and no minus to hit long range, that's a 3-up shooting across the table at whatever it is that you don't want me to shoot at strength 6 AP 4. So it's viable, but by the time you give him a Jezzail, he's 85 points, and he still has that problem of, I might shoot myself in the face. And in an 85-point model, I don't want them shooting themselves in the face, amazingly enough. I want them to be able to survive and keep their points at the end of the game, unless I have to use them as chaff.
Sure. Yeah, he's definitely... What's funny is, at 65 points, it really does place him on the more expensive side of the characters within the list, right? I mean, dude's more than the Plague Prophet, he's more than the Chief. I mean, he's the same cost as the freaking, like, Little Apprentice Magister, the Little Seer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a high cost, and I'm not sure he earns those points back when I cast around. Which leads me to my pick for loser, okay? Which is the rat demon, the vermin demon, right? Okay. Look, I love rat demons, okay, as much as the next person, probably more than. And there's a lot of stuff about this guy to like, certainly, right? He has a bunch of different little aspects he can choose, and they can give him all sorts of, different fun things. Like he can have heavy armor, so he's got like a 3-up normal save, and he's got his otherworldly save, right? And he becomes like strength 7, which is pretty good when he's like armor piercing 6 all the time or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something insane. That's pretty decent. My problem with him is, as good as he is, when you look at those numbers, and certainly he's got great numbers. Initiative 9, 5 attacks, like I said, AP 6, dude's swift stride, right? Strength 6 normally, and just a bunch of other stuff he could have, depending on the aspect you give him. It's hard to even really put it all together. But and he's a level 1 wizard too. My problem is at 400 points, he just doesn't work in the world of what you need to accomplish with this army. He's going to have to work so hard to earn those points back, and he crushes the open, like, it's just opportunity cost. It's an opportunity cost problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter how good he is, he prevents you from fitting in the other stuff you need to actually make this army work, and he's not picking up all that weight. You're going to lose pieces of you're going to lose, to carry on your analogy, it's like somebody pulling steps out of your staircase, right? Like, and he can't give you all the steps back.
No, not at all. He suffers from the same problem that all the greater demons do, all the big monsters like that do, your giant chaos lords, is that there's no chance he can ever earn back his points. But here's my question for you, Vince, and this is why I didn't call him my loser of losers, because my question to you is very simple. Have you ever played an edition where the Vermin Demon has been good?
Good. How are we defining good? Like, can good be passable? Because
no, good would be, I would field him in a competitive list.
No.
Okay. So my question behind this is, can you really be considered a loser when you've always been a loser? It's just it just goes without saying. The Vermin Lord, the Vermin Demon is going to suck. It's something that has held true throughout time. The model is beautiful. I'm having my guy paint one right now. It's going to be amazing on my shelf next to my bell, which I will never ever take in a competitive list because he's just not that good. I would play him in a fun, friendly list. I would never field him competitively in a tournament because it's just like cannon bait. Please shoot me.
I did run him, not the big version, like the old little crappy version. I ran him once when I was trying to get a Swedish score of like 17.3 for a Swedish tourney. So that's how he made his way into my list, because I was looking, because I needed to get like some ridiculously high Swedish score. So
you have to take something bad to get that high Swedish score. I think that just made my point.
Correct. Yes, I was like, where can I waste points on garbage? Oh, this guy, perfect.
He was in all the Swedish lists because he was so dadgum expensive that everybody took him because you didn't have to take more minuses that way. You got very few minuses for taking him, and you didn't have to buy anything else, which saved you more minuses. So he was great in Swedish, but as far as gameplay and effectiveness, no thanks.
Right. Yeah. I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think that saves you from being a loser. Look, I'm sorry. You are still, point of fact, you are still a loser. Neither of us are defending him at all. No. We're just arguing over how much of a loser he deserves to be called out for being. Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. I don't know, and part of the problem is he's such a cool concept. I just don't know how he ever actually works with the rest of what this army is supposed to be. Right? I don't know what the version of him that does have a home and a role looks like.
It's a very specific army, and it's going to be a theme army and a fun army, and it's something that a fluffy player would field more than not, because you would include this in something like the old Molder lists, where you can take lots of Thunderhulks, lots of Vermin Hulks, you can take the General, you can take them on the Monsters Rats, and all the stuff that you can build into this to make a giant, big monster mash Vermin Swarm list, which you could never do before. That's where you'll see him play, or the fun, friendly player who has one that wants to use him, whatever, but competitively, you're never going to see him.
I tend to agree. Tommy, I'm sorry, you stepped away for a minute, so I didn't cut over to you.
We have one of the twins apparently has woken up with an earache.
Oh, between the both of you, there's like a child explosion, so I get it. It's all good. It's no problem. Did you have any thoughts on the characters or anything you wanted to add for?
I'm just soaking it in, like because like Skaven have always been an enigma to me, both on the cheaty table in prior editions, and then looking at them now in ninth. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
Come on, Tommy. You know you want to paint 400 models that are 2 points apiece or 5 points at best. You know you want to do that. I want to hear every Warhammer Weekly for the next 4 years be Tommy Lyons going, I'm painting slaves. I'm still painting slaves. Oh my gosh.
Well, it's true. I actually have like 2 or 3 sets of Island of Blood in my back room. Of both my Skaven and my High Elves, and I was like, I have the start to a Skaven force, and then I realized, no, I don't. With like 3 sets, I still need like probably 3 more full sets to field enough slaves.
I mean, you've got the snow. You have the start, but I mean, technically, 1 is a start. That's just
right.
what. Yeah, I should question whether or not you've got a strong start. Running a race is a matter of taking 1 step off the block, but there are good starts and bad starts in a race.
I'm just going to say that you could take those 3 Island of Blood sets. You could add 1 Getting Started set from GW with the whatever the AOS version of Plague Monks is. I don't remember what they're called, but you could add 1 of those in and have a perfectly good start to a 1,000 or 15-point T9A force. Come on, Tom, we want to see it. The PNP needs to see you brick up slaves.
That sounds terrible. Like, just utterly terrible.
Tom's barely keeping his head above water for a tournament we're going to in like 2 months. Don't try to bury my teammate.
It's true. I'm barely keeping my models painted and on schedule.
Right.
Don't be further knocking my chance at best painted at this tournament out of
that's our hook, Vince. That's our hook. If Tom doesn't get done all his models before Nova in 2 months, his penance shall be a 2,000-point Vermin Swarm army.
I'm with. Absolutely. There you go. Now I like where your head's at, buddy. That's done. Done and done. If you do not get everything that you have promised done in the 2 months, then your next task is a 2,000-point Skaven army, Vermin Swarm army. Yes.
Non-metallic metal on all the slaves as well, because their weapons will be nice and shiny, let me tell you.
Oh, awesome. You guys are just asking me to commit suicide.
Pretty much. We'll just be committed. It's just be ritualistic seppuku in the middle.
Seppuku.
All right. So let's move on to some winners and losers in the monsters and big things. I said monsters and big things because clearly, vermin have some things in them that I would classify as pseudo monster war machine crazy things. We all know what I'm talking about. Your classic doom wheels and those sorts of things. So what do you got what do you got here? What's your feelings on the winners and losers in this category?
I'm going to give you a second place on this one before I get first place, because second place is going to be the Dreadmill. It still plays well. It didn't see much of a change. It took a small reduction in its viability, and opponents still hate the thing to all degrees of the ninth circle of hell, but it didn't get any better. My winner for this category is the Monstrous Rat, and that is the mount option which any warlord or chieftain can take to allow you to do some of those monster mash lists I was talking about before. And this is something where it gives you a viability and an opportunity to build a Vermin Swarm list like nobody's ever seen. Because before it was always you'd take a Clan Molder list, and unless you took this one special character and all you got was rat ogres out of it, you'd still have 600 points of slaves or clan rats running around. With this, you can field, 4 or 5 different monstrous rats, throw around 6 or 12 vermin hulks and a couple of A-bombs, and watch your opponent just bug eye out as you see this happen. And the model is a gorgeous model. There's a lot of viability in alternative models if you want to look around on something like Mirrors or other places like that. And it's strength 5, toughness 5 with a breath weapon and a 4-up regen. And it gives your tyrant leadership 18 inches because it's a large target already. Yes, please. For 100 points? Hell yes. It just gives you opportunity and something to do different. And if you go with something like, if they ever come back with a Swedish comp or anything like that, it's something so out of the ordinary for what Skaven used to do I think it just gives you a lot of opportunity, and that makes it fun, and why I think it's a winner.
It's so different. And what I'll say is, you mentioned it, like, you're right, this thing just has a host of rules. I will be completely honest. I didn't even really look at it I'm not gonna lie, I didn't look at this thing until earlier today when you sent me a note, okay? Because I've really classically always ignored this thing. Look, like I read it once, forever ago when it was like the Brood horror or something, right? Whatever it was called before. And I read it and I was like, nope, dumb, don't like it. And I just kind of, filed it away into the folio of things I'm never going to care about again, sort of folder. And then you sent me that note, and I was like, huh, is that thing really good? And then I went and read it, and I was like, holy crap, what in the what? Yeah, because it just the amount of stuff that it's giving you there as the amount of different things it's doing, it's crazy. Like, it really is pretty bonkers.
So you said fielding 5 of these, Skaven. Are you suggesting putting like heroes on top of all of it?
You could do 2 tyrants. You could do 3 chieftains. You maybe even do more than that. I'm not for sure. I haven't sat down and done the math on it because I wouldn't spend that much money on them. Yeah, no thank you. But you have the opportunity to really go to town with a number of these things, and I can see that happening. Long ago at an Alamo tournament that I went to, we saw a guy who brought three warlords on Bonebreakers, which is the Vermin bodyguard model in 8th edition, and people were just like, what the hell kind of Skaven list is this? This, I think, gives you a lot of those same things, and it's just really good to boot.
Yeah, it's basically, 185, yeah. I'm trying to think now. What are the points breakdown? 180. No, I can't remember. It's
185 for the warlord.
Yeah, 185 for the tyrant and 175 for the chief on it, right?
180 for the chief on 45 and 135.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, so they actually end up being pretty close in points, right? Yeah. Just because the monster strat's more expensive as a mount for the chief.
Yes, open up a little bit.
Yep. But it is really interesting, and it is like having it's funny because when I ran my, like, associatingly when I ran my UD, my general for Buckeye was the architect or whatever he's called now, okay, on a Mutt, on the snake, for much the same reason, right? And he would just run around behind the lines and do what he did, do his architect-y thing and pass out his regeneration and stuff like that. And nobody knows what to do when that, or he would join in the unit of snakes or whatever. But nobody knows what to do when that guy's out there just running around. It's just a weird thing because he doesn't really gain target priority. There's a lot of other threats, especially in a Vermin Swarm army, that people need to be focusing on. So, like, and that being said, if they do target him, he's actually pretty darn tough. So there's it's an interesting option for sure.
Right. It's viable. Any way you want to look at it, whether it's flavorful, whether it's a theme list, or whether you want to take it to a tournament, you could legitimately put a character on this because, as we've talked about with the general 18-inch range of the bubble, if you have a BSB 18-inch bubble, oh my goodness. That gives you the opportunity to do so many things you couldn't before. Run slaves out on a flank further away with just a character in it, not within general range. Put that unit of Rat Arms further forward than you normally would. You still got that reroll. Whatever the case may be, it's something you could never do before. It's fun, it's flavorful, and it's a great looking model that you can do with conversion attempts, which typically Skaven/Vermin Swarm players love to do anyways. Win.
Do you still like your Vermin Hulk bodyguard?
Yes and no. I think that it is still useful, but the Vermin Hulk bodyguard was good for one reason, and not one reason, but he was really good for one reason and one reason only. Because I can stick a warlord with a fell blade on top of him, and all of a sudden I get an extra wound, so I don't kill myself so fast. You can't do that in T9A. And since you can't do that in T9A, and I also believe it doesn't give him T5 anymore, which it did before.
It does not, yeah.
It's not as good. It still gives you some fun things to do, and I still have the model. I may field them once in a while, but it's not as useful as before, and that means I can take other things that are better.
Yeah. I mean, I like if I'm looking at that lower end of the points, I'd go with the litter almost every time just because it gives me that 18-inch.
Right, bubble.
Yeah, and I mean that's the shooting match, right? I mean that's what it's all about. So, I love the model. It's one of my favorite conversions that I did. So I agree with you there. Like, and again, just to reiterate, I think I'm not sure if I said this yet or not. You know, most of what we're talking about when we do winners and losers is competitive choices. We're not in any way saying you're a bad person for liking this stuff or taking this stuff. I love taking quote-unquote wrong choices in my army because that can be fun, right? So this is just like, we're just talking about the most competitive nature of it. Does not mean anything about what is the right choice for you. Run what you like. Have fun. There you go.
It was the model that I pinned. I broke him somehow at, I think he fell at, what was it? Quake City Rumble, and I never fixed him until now. I absolutely love this model. He's gorgeous. He's a lot of fun. He's just not that good anymore. I'll say
that's the story of Warhammer, right? You play long enough, you're like, I love this model, but it's just not that good anymore.
Oh, we're coming to that too. But I will say one more thing about Vermin Bodyguard before we get into it. The fact that he's now at least fixed for shooting purposes, and it's monstrous infantry, makes it useful because he can't be shot as easily if you put him in a Vermin unit, whereas before he was monstrous cavalry and a monstrous infantry unit and just becomes a giant mess. At least now he's protected from anything but a cannonball if you've got enough models in there. So that does help some, but then you're taking 600 points of rat ogres, and who wants to do that?
Yeah, I agreed. So I know where this loser's going because it's going to be exactly what you just said. So this is going to be a bit of a fall from grace and a sad story. We should start up the Sarah McLachlan music and talk about the In the Arms of an Angel for the next bit. So what's your loser in the monsters and big things category? Big tings, I should say. Skaven wouldn't say the H.
It kills me to say it. It really does. But if I have to pick a loser from the large model character, Lefty, you're going on the shelf. And it pains me to say this. It really does. It's such a fun model. I have a lot of fun with it. It's one of the most impressive models in the Vermin Swarm line. It's got great character. It's got great, just chutzpah. I don't even know the right word for it, but it's just great. And it just sucks. As we've talked about a lot of times already on this cast, incremental rules working for things have really helped a lot of the Vermin Swarm things get better. Incremental rules for the Abomination made it get that much worse because of the fact that you no longer get all the special attacks. You're stuck only taking 3d6 attacks every time. And while that sounds like it could be good, you're still only weapon skill 3, so you're only going to hit with half of whatever it is that you randomly roll. You don't get impact hits anymore. You don't come back to life. You're now immune to psychology, so you can't even flee with the thing. You don't have fear or terror, so that doesn't even work for you. And the only thing that gives you any benefit is toxic retaliation, the 25-point upgrade, which means when you get wounded and hurt, you hurt your enemy better than you probably could before. It's just all around not a good situation for the Abomination to be in. And for 235 points, I can take far better things for those points because of it. And as we talk further about this and the way that the list has gone, in 8th edition, the rare section was the place to be as a Skaven player. You took 625 points in rare, or just about as many of that as you possibly could. Every potential army list you took, whether it was double cannon, double doom wheel, double hell pit, a cannon, whatever it was. Now, Lefty doesn't even get considered as a choice. That's how bad and how far he's fallen from grace.
Yeah, yep. Like I don't even know what to say with it. Besides, I agree with literally everything you said. Like you went down and ticked every box I was going to mention, right? I think the impact hits hurt, and Thunder Stomp or whatever doesn't make up for that. But it's the 3d6 attacks that really kill me, because what that means is that on average you get 10. You hit with 5, you wound with, let's say, 4 or, something like that, right? Because you probably are rolling that 1, and that's assuming, by the way, that you're going into T3 or 4, which, often he will be, but not always.
Sure.
And that means he's barely making back his combat res before saves of any kind, which certainly he's clocking a big -3 off there, but that's shit. He's got no additional armor piercing, no additional special rules. He doesn't, like you said, the lack of fear or terror. His name is the Abomination. How does he not cause at least fear, for God's sakes? Right? I mean, yeah, this guy is just a story of lost rules. Like the number of rules he shed in between that change, it hit him hard. It's funny because you mentioned the Doom Wheel or whatever, and it. Sorry, Dreadmill. I cannot keep that new word in my head. I'm sorry. I've been calling it the Doom Wheel for 18 years. You'll have to forgive me. So, it's been a while. But I like that thing. I was honestly surprised with how much it kept, right? The fact that it's still got its grind, the fact that it's still got its impact hits +1, the fact that it still shoots all its lightning bolts like all the time, even when it's doing wacky things like running away, it's still shooting its lightning bolts out. The fact that they can still be, strength 10 on that great roll of a 5, like all of these things are still true. It came out so close to unscathed, right? And yet the Abomination just got kicked in the teeth. It's a story of I agree. Now, I mean, on the bright side, I would also my honorable mention would probably go to the 2-pack of Thunderhawks, which have been there to sort of pick up the slack that the A-bomb left behind, right? Like there's a new combatant has entered the arena in the rare section. The rule of there are things I love about the Thunderhawks and things I hate about the Thunderhawks. I love that they come with sort of all of the kit out on them at once, which I think is fantastic. So you can kind of, choose your destiny every round. I think obviously those guns are useful in different situations. And by that I mean the one time you want to use the rattling guns instead of the naphtha thrower for whatever reason. But my issue with them is only one of them can fire the gun. Like, I want them to all be able to fire the guns. I know
you want in times back.
I just want, I want look, I put guns on them. I want them to all be able to shoot the guns.
Vince, how many do you own?
I own 6.
I own 5, 4 of which have rattling guns modeled on them. I'm gonna say this, and we're gonna go back to the Abomination after we say this. The thing that they give you that I think you're not considering is this. They fit the synergy role perfectly. Because whatever it is you need from them at the moment, they give you. I'm at 24 inches, I need to shoot, I got a rattling gun. I've got 18 inches, I need to shoot, I've got a poison wind mortar. I'm at 12 inches, I've got a naphtha thrower. You're in combat, I've got a meat grinder. Whatever it is that you need, we got it, baby. And that's the thing that they have that most don't. And it's something that your opponents, while they may know it, may not expect that you can tactically flip from that many options to get yourself in the perfect weapon for the situation that you're in. It's just extremely usable, so I don't consider them losers at all. I don't think they're a great winner because I think a lot of people have them already, and they are extremely expensive at 75 points a pop and only fielding one weapon. But you'll see a lot of tournament lists where people take 2 packs of 2, and that makes them pretty darn good. But
yeah, this is one of those units where there's never a reason to add another one, right? They're going to be 2 packs. Yeah.
No. Right. Back to the Abomination, and one of the things that we didn't talk about, the rule to hit them hard, and this is the one that I think is primarily important. The timing. You've got the banner, which you can now turn off, and you've got the Lore of Fire being so prevalent out there because the attribute is just amazing that your Abominations, your Chimeras, your anything is going to get barbecued off the table, and that just takes them down another notch.
That is a really good point, and something I honestly hadn't even considered, but you're right. I mean, you see so much Lore of Fire. You're right, because that attribute is, it's good. It's decent, I would say, in the realm of attributes.
I almost lost both my mages in one round of shooting from one fireball and then the attribute. I was like, what the fuck?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. All right. Tom, are you happy that the A bomb has lost power?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like I want to just run. Like, if I ran a force like this, I would just want to run a bunch of those rats on the giant rats and
Sure.
a bunch of the Stormvermin equivalent. Like that. Like that's what I would want, as few models as possible on the table.
Oh, you mean the Thunderhawks? You mean the
Yeah,
Storm
the
Fiend
Thunderhawks.
equivalent?
Yeah,
Sorry.
the Storm
Yeah,
Fiend equivalent. Yeah,
sure.
like that's what I would want to field. Like a Skaven army of like 15 models.
I hope they don't get slightly scared. That's what I would say to you. Terror is your worst nightmare.
Be
That's
I refer Tom to Vermin Swarm Tactica #1.
I've seen that one, in fact.
You're a horde
I know
army
it's not
boy,
happening.
What's your average cost per model you need to aim at? Was it like 12 or where was it at?
10 to 12 points. Model
Yeah.
per 10 to 12 points.
There you go. Yep. That's a lot of models, folks. A lot of models.
It is a lot of models.
All right. So let's talk about. So let's round this out here. Let's bring it home with our last category, and then we'll do some future predictions. The weird stuff, right? So Skaven, Vermin Swarm now have classically had. They're known for having some weird choices sprinkled throughout. So this could be weapon teams or other sorts of things like this. There's a lot of weirdness hanging out in this army. So what's your winner? What's your loser in the in this category?
There's no way to pick one winner in the weird stuff category because of the way the army was designed and built. You have to just give it to a category. And for my category winner for weird stuff, it's the entire special category that shoots. There's just so much good stuff in there. And I mentioned in the previous segment that, rare has lost its luster. You don't take max rare anymore. You take what you need and that's it, because you're dumping 1,000+ points into special at every opportunity because the stuff is just that amazing in it. Whether you're discussing Jezzails, which, going with a theme that T9A did to put things that usually weren't seen on the table, strength 6, no neg for long range, and -4 to shooting, and I can shoot into combat, and I don't hurt myself as badly as I did before with 2 wounds. They're huge winners, considering the power down that every army got. Grenadiers, I don't own these. I probably should at this point, because they have ballistic skill 4 gas globes at 9 points a model that ignore armor saves that I can throw into combat with volley fire. And hurting myself doesn't hurt myself. Yep. By the way, they're also skirmishers, so they can act as cheap chaff in the middle if they need to. And then finally, Lord Tremendous's favorite and mine, the weapons teams. Because while the weapons teams aren't all that in a bag of chips, like they were in, say, Shooting Army of Doom Skaven armies in 6th edition, the fact that you can take a couple of rotary guns and pretty much with immunity shoot at your opponents, they come in to do those synergistic wounds that we talked about. Or if you know you're facing a guy who's taking a lot of armor, you take a couple of globe launchers and you just ignore all his armor as you shoot into the units with 2d6 shots. Or my personal favorite, the Naphtha Thrower, where you make hordes of trolls and ogres go to die. You have so much killing potential in this list, in this section of the book, that you just, there's no way to not take it. Going back to synergy again, you now have the ability to take Shadow as a lore, because you don't need to do all the damage you need to do, because you're going to shoot the absolute snot out of them with the things in special. And it is the major point of contention over a lot of non-Vermin Swarm players, because they think it's all so powerful. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, you got to have something to kill things. The army has always traditionally operated this way. We're putting things on the table that weren't seen before, which is good for everybody involved. And, well, you have to have something to be able to kill things. And I know I said that already, but it's just that important of a point. Because if you get into combat with slaves or rat-at-arms and they don't have some of these special toys, they're dead. Plain and simple, because they're only strength 3, toughness 3 rats with a light armor or no armor save whatsoever. So this gives the list the opportunity to work in this meta by simply combining that raw shooting power to let buffs and hexes do the work in the magic phase instead of having to do so much damage there.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned when you were talking about the naphtha thrower, and I think it really was in your vid, and I think it really was accurate. They are very much the definition. The weapons team specifically here are very much the definition of a glass cannon, right? I mean, yes, these things can put out crazy damage for their points, but they're also basically in the case of everything but the meat grinder, which has some different rules. So I'm specifically talking about the shooty ones here. um, they're a single model with 2 wounds in heavy armor, and yeah, they have they have like the Brood's Courage with ratted arms and the Vermin Guard that aren't on the table, but these guys are not hard to kill. Any kind of like errant fire that gets thrown at them, and they're dead. It really doesn't like any kind of thing that looks at them funny and they get in range of, they're just going to drop like a sack of potatoes, right? So, I mean, that is the definition of a glass cannon. So I think they're one of those things. Glass cannons are the most dangerous when people don't realize what they're capable of, right? Mm-hmm. Even you can say, yes, as a Vermin Swarm player, I know that, and I can use cover and other units to hide them, to keep them out of line of sight until the moment's right, and then I come around and I strike or whatever. And yeah, that's all true, but that still is relying on, one, that the board is set up that I can do that, or my models or the way that they're moving around the board is set up so that I can do that, or that I've created that situation. Two, that then still allows me to act at the right time to where I can actually do what I need to lever them for power, which isn't always the case, right? And three, that something just doesn't go wrong then anyways, and I roll doubles on those things, because things like the rattling gun, it's not that hard to roll doubles on 2d6, or 3d6 especially. And, I do that, and I've got a pretty good chance that gun doesn't work anymore, or doesn't fire, or doesn't do what I want it to on those doubles, right? I've got a healthy chance on that table for that to be the result.
And I'll even go number 4 on you there. You have to hope that your opponent doesn't know what you're doing, as you referenced before. Because if your opponent in a competitive setting, such as we're talking about, sees a weapons team on the table, it might not be priority 1 to kill, but it's sure priority 2. For absolute certain. Either that, or they're playing deployment games, and when you drop it, they're deploying everything that it's going to traditionally kill on the other side of the world, because they don't want it anywhere near that, and it dies its points by just simply not killing it. And at 65 points, it's not a horrible investment, even if you don't get to shoot it by simply, controlling the board. But as we've already talked about, prevalence of lure of fire, I'm going to fireball something you don't care about. You're going to save dice for something you do care about, and then I'm going to attribute to kill your weapons team.
Yep.
Plenty simple. There are answers for it all over the world, even if it's just the ruby ring thing. Because it still gets an attribute, because it still casts fireball, and you still kill my weapons team. You breathe on the thing and it dies, and it's lost potential. But oh man, when you forget about it, does it punch you right square in the teeth and hit you all the way in the back of the throat?
Yeah. No, I agree. In honesty, though, I've got to give it to, if I had to pick a single winner, my pick would be the Jezzails, and that's just because I've got a deep-seated love of those going way back. You talked about 6th edition. Jezzails, that was, like I loved playing Jezzails back in 6th. They were great. I loved grinding units of Bretonnian Knights, just down into dust under hails of Jezzail fire, watching that armor just melt away. And Jezzails are back, baby. I mean, that's what it is. Like, they're right-costed, right-ranged. They're ignoring the long range. It's just they are the unit where it's exactly the price point I wanted to buy in at for the effective kill power that I get and the range that I want. To me, they're my winner, and I think when they wrote the book, they knew that, because it also has that weird 0 to 2 limit, right? That you don't really see many units have, other than like one of a kind. It generally tends to be like whatever or 1, right? But these guys had this weird. They needed to cut some middle ground, so we got the weird 0 to 2 on them, right?
And that the 0 to 2 combined with a max unit size of 6 really builds in some of the thing that allows them to stay at 20 points, and the fact that that's another unit. Yeah, they're 2 wounds apiece, so it takes a little bit more than just random bow fire. But you kill 2 of them, they're still leadership 5. They're going to run right square off the table. Even in general range, you're at leadership 7 at best.
Yep.
they're not going to stay. But the problem people have at this point is that in competitive lists, everybody is still diverting, I think, more towards close combat fighty stuff and all the buffs and hexes because they've proven to be so powerful with the way that the T9A meta has gone. They're ignoring some of the damage stuff. And against Vermin Swarm, as always, we break all the rules. You have to break how you bring your army list because you have to prepare for the ability to do some of these things with things like Jezzail's and weapons teams.
Yep. And honorable mention, I agree, to the Globadiers. Happy to see those guys getting Grenadiers, whatever they are now. Happy to see those guys being good. My conversion for those, by the way, you know the wind launcher guy that comes out of the Island of Blood? Mm-hmm. So the back guy is just holding a big globe and has like a gas mask on and stuff. Mm-hmm. I just chopped the front guy off, and I got a bunch of dudes carrying around the big balls, and those are my Globadiers. You get a bunch of those guys. Those guys are like $1 a piece. Way cheaper than the real gas Globadiers, let me tell you what. So that was
check your email real fast.
Okay.
I sent you. I had a watcher. I don't know if it was on Facebook or whatever, but he cobbled these together like this, and I really like this. And you can throw this up there if you want to.
Yeah, let's do it. Let me share this up. These are awesome. All right, let me share this up here. So here we have some custom. Oops, here we go. Some custom Globadiers. So we've got a storm or a vermin guard body, and then what's the back from? What's this kit back here from?
I just sent you the recipe in another email. Backpacks on Maxmini. I don't know what they're from. Veer-Myn Nightmare parts. I believe those are Mantic.
Sounds right. Yeah.
The Stormvermin bodies and arms you can buy just there, but he's got 4 or 5 different things kit bashed into this, and he's like, yeah, here's a couple things you can do. Here's how you make it work. That's all hobby. That sounds like Hindu to me when you're speaking to me. And I'm like, sure, make me 15 of these. And he's like, no. But I thought they were really good looking, and I think that anybody who's looking for these models might be interested in these, especially if you have a hatred for metal like Vince and I do.
Yes, absolutely. That's cool. Send me the recipe, and is it in there too?
I sent it to you in a separate email. It's already there.
Okay, got it. Cool. I'll throw this recipe in the description, just so if anybody wants to duplicate these things, they can.
There you go.
Yeah, because that's super cool, and I love a good conversion. Awesome. That's super fun. I don't know if you listed. I want to know what the little balls are. It's just like a little orange ball. All right, that's pretty great. Okay, so those are the winners in the weird stuff. What's your loser?
The Bell. and at least in 8th, you could do a list where Bell was competitive. I don't think you can in this. And this isn't so much the death by 1,000 different rule disadvantages so much as it simply doesn't do enough to justify its points. And when it comes down to the way that you try and build a Vermin Swarm army, of having a lot of bodies and having a lot of synergistic work together, the Bell provides some ability to do some of those things, but much like the Vermin Demon, it doesn't provide enough. And when you put a Magister on it, it's a 500-point sink that's never going to get its points back, that everybody's going to shoot their cannons at, that doesn't do enough to justify its points.
Do you think part of the problem with the Bell is that the pendulum is so good, and you just like fitting both in the list it just becomes way too much points into way too few models?
That is one problem with it, but the problem with it is even if you try and take it on its own, you still can't squeeze enough into it to make it viable. It's things like you want to put more into it. Like back in 8th edition, you took a Bell, you took a Fellblade guy in there, you took 2 assassins in there, you took a BSB in there, and you took a Bell. You can't do that anymore. You can only put 1 assassin in. You can put the Fellblade guy in if you want to, but it's probably going to die. You can't put another war platform in because the war platform rule says that you can only have 1, so you can't put a meat grinder in there. You can't put enough into the Bell to justify its points, and you can't make it defensive enough so that if somebody really wants to crack the Bell, that they're going to come and just charge it with 3 different things because you don't have enough to stop it. In addition, it's not unbreakable anymore. And that's a big loss. Whereas 1 bad roll, if I snipe your BSB with something, you make 1 bad roll, you lose the Bell and 1,000 to 1,200 points your army. You can't do it. You can't take that risk.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, and it's a shame too, because you look at a lot of, say, like the buffs that are on there or whatever that it can generate, and you look at them, and it's one of those things that you look at it on paper and you're like, man, it does a lot of great stuff, right? But yeah, yep. Not to mention the fact that it's so, like, in general, I don't really care about killing my own unit, but that thing does a lot of damage to your own unit every time you're ringing it. Because all doubles are like D6, Strength 4, AP 6 hits. Right. I mean, you're just bleeding models out of that unit the whole time that thing's ringing, because you're going to roll doubles a couple times in the game at least.
Plus any miscast or anything else you do. Yep. But the other problem with it that it comes to is if you just look at what it does, it's something that harkens back to 8th or 7th edition Skaven. And if you look at Vermin Swarm as a whole for the rest of the army, the randomness is mostly gone. Other than your 2d6 shots or the 3d6 in the Abomination or anything like that, there's a lot of, I know exactly what I'm going to get. Or even in the case of like the Chieftain's Brew, that you get a couple different effects. You know pretty much what you're going to accomplish when you take that item. With this, every turn, you never know what you're going to get, if it's going to be good, if it's not going to be good. And for 200 points, I can't justify enough that's random like that.
There's no top end that justifies the risk, right? Like, you're just going to get the wrong buff at the wrong time. With the old bell and the big chart, there were some items that were way up there that were just crazy. Like, you could break every enemy war machine on the table with one ring of the bell, right?
Right.
And that, so, like, that justified its existence in a few lists combined with, like, say, your old ETC 2 Towers list or something, right, where it was just about having 2 units that would never give up their points ever. So it had its purposes. Whereas now, yeah, there are a bunch of perfectly fine buffs, but the fact I don't control when that happens is I'm going to get the wrong buff at the wrong time, more or less every time. Right? I mean, odds are. So my loser is one that I'm truly sad about, because, and we're going to go back and have the same conversation again about about the big demon, okay? Because they have also, I'm not saying the demon's not my pick. I'm just saying the conversation's going to be the same, because these guys have never been good ever that I distinctly remember. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you think differently. But that is the Plague Disciples, right? So your censer bearers, your flail wielders. I want these guys. I have wanted these guys to be good in every single edition since I started playing the game. You know, starting with 5th on, I wanted these guys to be good. They've never actually been good. They've always been a point sink that just basically died.
They were good in sad lists, if I recall, in 6th. But everybody knew to avoid them like the plague and just shot them, and they were like 14 points a model or something stupid, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, they've always been so expensive, yes. Yeah, they were super expensive back then.
Here's my statement for why they can be usable.
All right, set me correct. I want to, because I'm keen to use them if there's any way to salvage these things. Go.
I want to check. I want to check, because I want to look at something. I'm going to say this much. If you're considering taking foot pads,
okay,
they're a cheaper.
All right, so sure, let's just go with that. Keep going. That's your opening gambit. All right.
They're a cheaper mobile bunker than foot pads. They come with skirmish built in, and they have a lot more fighty than the others do. But for a mainline combat unit, you're right, that's not going to work. The thing that worked so great for them before was the fact that they got the sensor attack out of combat. Right. It happened before any combat happened. It happened at like the impact hits level, so nobody could do anything about it. Now impact hits are going to wreck you as you're doing your strength 3 toxic attack. It's just not enough to justify it. Can you take them? Yes. Are they fieldable on a competitive list? No, because they just don't put out enough damage for the points you're going to take. If you're going to take them, you're going to take them either as a mobile bunker, or you're going to take them as a 65-point chaff unit because you don't like rat swarms or giant rats for some reason.
Yeah, and I mean, remember, you only get 5 of these guys for that 65 points, and you can only roll 15 deep total, right? I mean,
yes.
Special credit for giving them monstrous support, which I find to be a very clever. That's like a wonderful little rules picadillo for them that I find very clever, a clever way to back in and make them still be able to like throw a lot of attacks out. But there's still no way. I mean, you're right. If anything, these guys are they're gonna die. They're not. Good.
Here's what I thought that the rules team was trying to do with them, because if you look at the rule that nobody pays attention to on Plague Disciples, it's Bird's Courage Plague Brotherhood. My thought was that they thought they were going to be able to run up with a Plague Furnace, anvil somebody with a furnace, and then you were going to sweep into the flank with Plague Disciples and just eat them for breakfast. The problem is the fact that the Plague Pendulum has gone through and killed that unit, killed the next unit, and they're into a third unit before you bother to charge the Disciples into the flank.
They're just trying to keep up, yeah.
Right. Wait for me, boss! I can't get there!
I'm carrying this big, heavy, stupid flail. Slow down! Stop overrunning into every unit. God, I can't keep up. You've murdered your way across half the board.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So they're my loser. I've wanted them to be good for as many years as I've played this game. They're not. It's all right. Next time. All right. So let's speaking of next time, let's talk about some future predictions. All right. So and I'm gonna let this. That's right. It's time to put it on the line. So you get to start out. What's your future predictions? You can go as deep or not as you like with this.
So I have to give a couple caveats. Number one, I can see a little bit of insight into the T9A forums that most people can't, because I'm a content team producer. So I know a little bit about what's coming, but I don't have the full list. I will not share what I do know from a specific standpoint. So this is all just conjecture and supposition on what I think from what I know. If I had to guess, the Pendulum is going to take the nerf bat pretty hard. And when it comes down to it, I'm okay with that from the perspective that it's stupid cheap at 150 points for everything it does. I would be fine, and this would be my fix for the Bell. I'd swap it in the Bell's points. And that might get me to take a Bell. And I'd still take the Pendulum, because at 200 points, it's still that good. I'd still pay those points. And it would tax me enough on other things that it makes me reduce the rest of the army to do it. But I imagine they're going to make it less effective, because even at 200 points, it still murderizes anything in its path. I think the special shooting category is going to take the nerf bat as well, because if you look at the ETC list and you look at what Chaihammer said and all that the Vermin Swarm shooting lists were the ones that nobody wanted to face, because everybody had 3 units of Globes and 2 units of Zazales and a couple Thunderhulks and a couple and just shot the absolute snot out of you before that. I think you're probably going to see points increases across the board, or maybe you can't take as many units of them or something like that. That is just going to make it so you can't run as heavy a shooting list as you possibly could. I think those are the 2 major ones that I'd have to say, because you have to remember that the September updates is a hot fix. It's not a complete rewrite. It's not a re-engineering. It's just a what do we see that's really broken and needs to be adjusted. And those are the 2 biggest offenders by far that I think they're going to tweak. I'd like to see them do more. I'd like to see them make Vermin Hulks a little bit better. I'd like to see another flag option in not core. I'd like to see the character options be adjusted so a little bit like the Bell and that sort of stuff. But I think for a hot fix, you're going to see minimal tweaks, but I think those tweaks are going to severely impact those 2 options.
Yeah, I think you're right. Just looking at it and hearing what I hear, I think you're probably correct. I think long term, when we look at like the next year updates, right, when we get sort of the new version, what I'd love to see is those Vermin Guard given a rollback. I think that's honestly, if I had to pick one thing that I want to have happen, if I it's certainly wish listing, but I think that they've got to look at a bunch of data and see a distinct lack of Vermin Guard units showing up in a lot of tournament lists over the next year. And it's been such a mainstay unit for so long and such a critical unit, I think, to the history of the army. And it isn't just a bunch of slaves, right? It's actually an interesting unit. It actually plays more like a normal unit, I guess, is what I would say in the game, right?
Right.
For it to be just out and out bottom of the barrel choice, I think is probably not right. I think the meat grinder will take a hit at some point in time, not in the too distant future as well. That pop filter's doing a lot of work. Look, I don't want it to either, but come on, you know it's going to. Like
I'm just.
units of clan rats getting breath weapons and super impact hits. Probably not going to be continuing into the foreseeable future. I'd love it if it did.
It makes them feelable, is all I'm gonna say. But regarding your point on Vermin Swarm, Vermin cards, excuse me, I'm gonna say this. This has been a heavily debated topic on the Vermin Swarm board on T9A forum. There's currently an 8-page thread going with 2,500 views and 149 responses because so many people are passionate and want to see these things do something. Whether it's, I'm going to give them the option for the old Queek Guard upgrade, which is pay 3 points a model and give them extra strength and extra weapon skill, something like that, or move them to special so that they can field points somewhere else and have a flag. Whether it's they have the option to not have a halberd anymore, or drop the shield and save a point, or whatever it is that you want them to do. There's a lot of people out there talking about the ways to make them good, and in a forum that, compared to the rest of the T9A forum, the Vermin Swarm forum is mostly vacant. There's not a whole lot of activity that goes on there other than just a couple of questions, the list reviews, and then the Vermin Hulk talks and Vermin Guard talks. And that's really the two things that hit the most hits because that's what people are interested in finding out about and making better. And that's one of the great things about the T9A community.
Absolutely. All right. So I think that more or less brings us to the end of our discussion of the Vermin Swarm. Obviously, we packed this all in. I wanted to get it in right before the hot fix that's going to check. That was my goal. But I thought it was well-timed given all the hot discussion they've been engendering in the community lately. That wasn't planned. I was talking to Chris quite a while back when we set this up, and then all of a sudden we had a lot of fun activity bounce around the community. So, like I said, check out Lord T's video. Check out Skaven's Tactica series, which I'm sure you'll get to have the fun of re-recording certain elements of, over the coming months through a couple hotfix rounds or whatever. But it keeps you in content.
It's one of the reasons why I did it the way I did it, actually, because the only one I would probably have to adjust will be number 5, the Naphtha Thrower, which that was entirely a response to Lord T. But my plan is if you're watching this and you're Vermin Swarm lover, as soon as the hot fixes come out, I have I don't know, 7 or 8 more videos planned with just digging through every nugget in the book and talking about on a just deep level about what you can do with it, why you should take it, why you shouldn't take it, what options it works with, whatever I can figure out to kind of replicate what Nick from Long Island did with 8th edition Skaven. And just update it for 9th, because after the hot fixes, we're going to stay the same for quite a while, and I think that will have some good staying power and give people a lot of insight into why I run what I run and why tournament players run what they run.
Very good. So, like I said, don't forget, check out down below for all those links. Skaven, any final thoughts there, sir?
I think that. Oh gosh, there's a lot I could say here. I think the final thought is we'll end on a high note. If you're a Vermin Swarm player, you're in a very good place. Even if the hot fixes we talked about come into place, you're still in a very good place. You are rewarded for having the intestinal fortitude, unlike Tom Lyons, to paint 400 models or have painted 400 models. You are well rewarded for that. Field those models with pride and go take your enemies by the throat.
I love it. Tom, any closing thoughts? You have no fortitude to paint 400 models.
Clearly. That's a lot of models. That's all I'm saying. I did a bunch of dwarves, like a lot of dwarves.
Those are the worst. We hate them. We hate them. All right. So what I will say is thank you very much for watching, everybody. We hope you enjoyed the discussion. It was super fun. Chris, as always, buddy, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Don't worry, we'll do this all again sometime in the future. Whenever the version change is big enough, you're going to see round 2 of this discussion. I promise you on my channel, there will always be rat discussion. That is going to be a thing. They do and ever will hold a special place in my cold, icy heart. So,
invite anytime, buddy. I'm always happy to come on.
Rock on. All right, for everybody out there, thank you very much. We'll see you next Wednesday.